Hello, good evening, and welcome back. Well, good news. It seems that people are moving over to alternative tech, including myself, of course, and therefore the demand is so huge following the mass censorship and cancelling, disbarring, with Donald Trump censoring, leading the charge from Twitter and Facebook and Instagram and Snapchat of all places, that we've seen places like Signal, the messaging platform, has stopped working as downloads surge, and that is fantastic. Of course, we are aware that Parler's been taken off. However, we've got places like Gab, which has been independent since pretty much its inception, and that is the correct way to do it. As, of course, the issue that Parler had is by using Amazon Web Services, the same as Twitter, mind you, that when the cartel wishes to get together, as they most evidently have done, and they have done historically, with teaming together to take off people like Alex Jones or Carl Benjamin, as in Sargon of Akkad. And that was what the Patreon controversy was all about, that clearly they have acted as a cartel before, and now this is just the latest iteration of it. Thankfully, Parler does have a leg to stand on, seeing as there is evident hypocrisy, seeing as Amazon was saying that they do not trust Parler to be able to take away or censor all of the illegal speech on the platform, as in calls to violence, incitement. Meanwhile, Parler could quote and use examples of the same thing being done on Twitter, but just with different political views, in order to try and bring legal proceedings against Twitter. So that is where we're hoping that there will be a difference. But we can't just hope on those things. Of course, we can support them, but the most important thing is to do the changes within ourselves. And using a rival to the cartel, the tech monopolies, is definitely something worth doing, like Signal and Telegram, which I use myself, of course. So messaging platform Signal said on Friday it was experiencing technical difficulties as it worked to accommodate millions of new users. And bravo, that is fantastic news. And it's hardly a surprise that we're seeing such an uptick in cryptocurrencies, whether that be Bitcoin or Ethereum or so on. It is also phenomenal news. Not because secession is the answer. Not because I want people to retreat, go into an echo chamber, and just tap out of life. Because, as I mentioned with the Lever a while back, that the Amish community are great, and I'm sure, and live a very happy life within their community. But as he so rightly pointed out, if there was a large enough external threat, or maybe even domestic threat, they wouldn't stand a chance, because they are simply not technologically advanced enough, and if somebody wished to wipe them out, then they would do so. Of course, if your happiness comes from something other than technical development and being able to defend yourselves, then that's fine, but I think for the vast majority of us, that is not the case, in which case it is not fine. So we definitely need to find alternatives, or even build them, but the most important thing is, of course, to be able to communicate with each other and ensure that these ideas can't be censored, because, of course, ideas may be suppressed for a while, but they will rise up again. And so it is vital that, despite the dark ages that we have had, whether that be the medieval dark ages or the more recent dark ages, experienced in different countries across the world, as China is experiencing now with their Great Firewall, that we still keep on going, share our ideas around, and allow enlightenment to take root with as many people as possible. If that means having to change our habits from using things that are easy and straightforward, like YouTube, as we're using now, that's why backups are on BitChute, or if it is to use messaging apps like Facebook Messenger, or WhatsApp, or Instagram, or Snapchat, or whatever it might be, or Twitter, if they're all controlled by the same cartels that we do not appreciate, we do not agree to, then we do have to either build or find alternatives, as Signal, or Telegram, or Minds, or Gab, or BitChute, or Parler was, that they are alternatives which I implore you to use. So on Twitter, Signal said it had added servers at a record pace and was working to restore service. And that has to be a blow to somebody like Jack, to just say that we are essentially a rival. Not directly to Twitter, as Minds would be more so, but they are rival to the political ideology that people like Jack Dorsey, the CEO of Twitter, hold. And that is fantastic. That Signal, by all accounts, is of course, just for people who respect their privacy, and therefore Jack has no grounds to censor them as far as they try and push those limits. They still have no grounds, in which case Signal can still tweet out. It is fantastic that because it is not quite too late and there is still hope, you can still use the last vestiges of ground that are still available on echo chambers like Twitter and on the old social media, which of course used to be the new social media following on from MySpace, that you can still use that in order to garner new followers somewhere else and to retain your audience somewhere else. And from the podcast of the Lotus Eaters, that they mentioned using the hashtag Exodus, for example, in order to find people that you would have left behind from previous platforms. And that is another thing that I do encourage you to do, to pick a hashtag that would work for you guys in order to find each other once you're on a new platform. Whatever it might be, by all means, put it in the comments and I'll pin my favorite one and mention it in the next video. So as they say, Signal is experiencing technical difficulties. We are working hard to restore service as quick as possible. And went on to say, millions upon millions of new users are sending a message that privacy matters, it says in a tweet. Fantastic. That is vitally important because too long people have taken the route of complacency and they would just do whatever is easy. And of course, if your privacy is encroached upon, then that means that the companies that you give your privacy to, when everything's free, then you are the product. It means that you will have things suggested to you, they will know you, things will be far easier because you won't really have to think about things. They'll know what you want and therefore you can just let them do the work for you. And it is definitely easier. However, do you want people to have that much information about you? I would say no. And it isn't just about paranoia or a guilty conscience, but it is to do with the fact that, as I've said before, there are too many laws that are already in existence and being created, and you do not know what laws will be created next or who will be in power, that chances are you could be prosecuted for something that is already on your file, even though you didn't know it was a crime, for example. Speeding is the most obvious one of these, of course. So, of course, Signal is not the only option. So, although Signal was downloaded 246,000 times worldwide in the week before WhatsApp announced the change on 4th of January, and then 8.8 million times the week after. And that is a brilliant uptick. Really is. And as I say, it is global. It seems to be about the same around the world. So that is fantastic. So the issue with WhatsApp, and if you haven't checked, then I recommend that you do so. Obviously, no one's got time to read all of the terms and conditions, but let's pick the show notes. Why not? So as the BBC reports, WhatsApp has said the data it shares from users outside the EU and UK does not include messages, groups, or call logs. However, it does include phone number and other information provided on registration, such as your name, and we'll get into shadow profiles in a moment, information about the user's phone, including make, model, and mobile company, internet protocol addresses, just IP addresses, which indicate the location of a user's internet connection, and any payments and financial transactions made over WhatsApp. So, this means, of course, that they know where you are. Anytime that you would connect to the internet, if you're using Wi-Fi, for example, then they would know where you are, which would mean being able to know where you're shopping, where you're going, and the people that you're interacting with, because the people that you're interacting with, if they were having to connect to the same Wi-Fi as you at the same time, then they would know that you met up together, for example. Things like that, especially if you have exchanged messages between each other, which, seeing as you give access to contacts, then they would know that you know each other. And that's also how you build a shadow profile, for example. That Facebook is their prime example, that there would be a member of the family that does not wish to use Facebook because they value their privacy, in which case they do not. However, they would still appear in photos and be mentioned in those photos. They'd be the one not tagged, but one still mentioned. there would be other people on Facebook who have their phone number and address and email address within their contact book, in which case this shadow profile would be created about this person without their knowledge, and yet there would still be a lot of information garnered about this person without them even consenting to using Facebook or having their privacy encroached upon whatsoever. And that is a shadow profile. So information about the user's phone, including make, model, and mobile company. That is more information to not only then know which mobile company to go to complain about, should there be issues and pressure upon to say, hey, as Tim Pool mentions, that the classic is that, hey, why do you support white supremacists using your services? At which point, of course, they'll say, oh, no, we don't do that at all. Why do you say that? It's like, oh, well, it's this person who is an obvious white supremacist is using your services. And without doing any research, the company will then disbar them from using their services. So that is certainly why it is important. It's for smearing companies as well, just so that they toe the line, as well as punishing the individual. And then the payments and financial transactions made over WhatsApp is, of course, to see not only what they're buying in particular, by seeing where the payments are going to, and it depends how much detail they can see with regards to that, seeing as they can't see messages, groups, or call logs. But not only would it be able to show the companies which they support, especially if you're donating to your favorite content creators, link in description, but for serious sake, it would be more along the likes of Bill Whittle, Patriotic Alternative, Stephen Crowder, Lotus Eaters, those kinds of people, that they would say, yeah, well, I don't appreciate that you're supporting those people, and therefore we wish to remove you, or at least put a black mark against you, just make things difficult for you, essentially. And of course then see your kind of interest in order to recommend other things to you and to try and lead you and mold you in a way that they wish for you to be. And this is the primary concern insofar as Operation Dragonfly, which was officially discontinued until they admitted that it kept going, from Google with their work with China and their social credit score, in order to try and change people's behavior to fit the party narrative of the ruling elite at the time. And that was the entire point behind it. And it is still ongoing. And of course, it seems like China was just a dry run in order for it to be used over here as well. So, yes, Signal, Telegram, Minds, Gab, BitChute, Odyssey, Rumble, all of those. Pick your favourite, go ahead, and definitely do get involved. If you feel like getting financially involved as well, then check out places for cryptocurrency before it rockets off too much. I mean, if the billionaires are looking into Bitcoin, then maybe that's something that you wish to look into as well. Not financial advice, legal disclaimer, but definitely something worth looking into, at least. But with that, that's it for me. Let me know what you guys think down below. Do you think that, hey, maybe there is positivity happening? Or do you think, yeah, really, it's just a few million? I mean, if you look at it compared to WhatsApp, sure, it shrank from 11.3 million to 9.2 million, but it's still greater, isn't it? 8.8 million for Signal to 9.2 for WhatsApp, and then this is a sudden increase from 250,000, meaning it's just people have made the change. It's not as if this is going to be a continued growth. It's not much, fewer than 10 million out of the entire population of the world, and in the UK, you've got 191,000 out of 67 million people. That's not really enough. And in the US, 1 million out of 350 million people. It's not really a game changer because it's fewer than 1%. Either way, let me know. Always intrigued to hear what you guys have to say. Are you optimistic or pessimistic? That's essentially what it comes down to. Or do you think there is another way around these things? And when will it be that people finally do make that switch? And is it going to be to retain ground and try and gain ground from us right-wingers? Or is it a kind of secession? Because we know that we are the kinds of people who are actually productive and produce things for the rest of society. And therefore, if we just leave the radical left to themselves, they will eat their own and destroy themselves because they don't have enough to go around, because they don't bloody produce anything. And therefore we can feign secession because they'll just crumble and we can take it back over once they fall. Either way, let me know down below. Always intrigued to hear what you guys have to say. Thanks for liking, sharing, commenting, subscribing. All that good stuff really does help the channel out a lot. And as always, until next time, have a good one.